This is Martin Giles from the Guildford Dragon News, and this morning I'm joined by Angela Richardson, Guildford's MP. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Martin.
Right, straight into the questions. I know you're busy. How has the coronavirus crisis affected your work as Guildford's MP?
Well, thank you for asking me to join you this morning. It's good to touch base again after a couple of months break. So it's so nice to be chatting again. I think the thing that's changed the most is obviously we've all moved out of Westminster into our constituencies, and while for the most part it's been recess, the work hasn't stopped. I think. It's been a case of sitting down with a laptop every day, and as a team, we have a conference call every day to talk through, what's the last 24 hours been like, what are the issues coming up, and what are our plans for the next 24 hours. So we speak every day during the week, and I think what's happened is that I've seen an increase in the number of emails that I had been receiving, and I think that's understandable. I mean, normally the emails are split into what's called casework, where you've got constituents who have issues and difficulties, then you need to contact departments or signpost them onto the council or contact the council on their behalf to try and get issues resolved. And then we have people emailing in on policy issues. So those will be sometimes campaigns that come in around a certain subject. And then you get sort of the regular emails that come in inviting you to go and attend different things, lobbying emails asking for your support on issues. And so the thing that's changed is obviously the invitations stopped, which was rather good. And the diary got cleared because we weren't allowed to meet with anybody. There have been online meetings taking place, over the last couple of weeks, but generally it's changed from looking at the policy side of things and drilling right down into helping caseworks, almost becoming like a local councillor again. That's taken up the majority of my time. There are a number of people in Guildford who are struggling with the situation with coronavirus.
So a couple of things there. First of all, obviously Parliament's had to close down, and I think everyone will understand this is an emergency situation. So, the emergency rules are in place. But do you feel that the MPs are still able to scrutinise and test the government and its policies?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I saw you published my response to Zoe's open letter to me, and that was one of the questions that came up. And I think I laid out quite clearly what had been happening over that course of time. So, it's quite easy for opposition members of Parliament to sort of take to Twitter and say, "Oh, I've got so many questions to ask." Well, everybody's been asking the questions, so the letters keep pouring in. So in my inbox, there are quite often cross-party letters that are being sent around to add signatures to ask the government for more clarification on issues. And as I mentioned, Penny Mordaunt has been taking a daily conference call, and that is Saturday and Sunday as well at 10 a.m. every day. Every member of Parliament can join the conversation, and then they're able to put questions directly to Penny, which then she sends straight out to all the departments and asks, say, these are the top issues that we need to get urgent resolution on. And I get copied in on those emails, being a PPS, so I get to see each department, what are the issues coming up every day. And it sometimes will list who is the member who's asking the question, and they are cross-party, so it's not just Conservatives asking questions, it's everybody.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so I believe that along with the select committees that have been running, in particular, the Health Select Committee has had a couple of online meetings holding the ministers to account. And, there are many mechanisms that are used continually throughout the year, every year. I think it's just the case that because there are difficulties in holding Parliament in the way that we normally would do, I think people suddenly think, oh, nothing happens. Well, I can assure the people of Guildford that it's continual scrutiny and continual work, of MPs to question government about what's going on and to get clarification, and also to feed in where things aren't working as well. And that's been part of my job, is to say, look, I'm getting constituents writing and saying, that this doesn't work practically. Can we sort it out? So
Okay,
let's go.
so perhaps we can move on to those in a minute. But just before we do, what about those constituents who are not equipped with IT or not probably in the older section of our communities? How can you make sure that you're hearing what their concerns are as well?
So people are still able to write into me. I get my post redirected. So my post has been redirected from Westminster, so that physical letters will still reach me. I find that if they are elderly, what is happening is that a family member, and they don't have to live in the constituency, they can just write to me and let me know that their elderly relative, they have concerns over them getting food. I've had lots of emails like that coming in. The other thing that I've noticed is that people are using community boards to say, I have a relative who lives in a rural part of the constituency. Can anybody help get them shopping? So in terms of contacting me, they can still contact me. They can write, they can email. I am getting a lot of emails in from elderly residents. So even though they might not use social media as much, they still seem to be quite good on the email. And I don't think anything's changed in terms of being able to communicate with me. And I have the ability to be able to write back to them as well.
Okay. Now, the regulation...
And the other thing, can I just mention quickly, the very helpful thing was that Surrey County Council put a leaflet through everybody's letterbox with the helpline on it. And because I knew that was coming, I thought rather than giving people a lot of different contact numbers, it's better that they have one point of contact, and then that contact triages out to the help that they need, whether that's at the borough council level or at all the local voluntary groups that are set up.
Okay, if you send that through, I'll append it to the interview so that people can see it there.
Okay, and I'll do that along with the Guildford Borough Council number that's been set up in the last couple of weeks. So
thank you. That's great. Now, the regulations and guidance were understandably introduced in a rush fashion, and I think people would forgive that, but it was necessary. But do you think anything needs to be reconsidered now? For instance, the advice on wearing masks.
So I think the speed that government and the civil service have been able to move in terms of introducing not only guidance but support and help has been quite astonishing. And obviously, as we go along and we sort of experience how the guidance works in practice, there's always room for tweaking. In terms of the masks, I've been watching the press conferences every day, as I'm sure many of your subscribers will be doing as well. And I think that it was clear the Chief Scientific Officer said regarding the wearing of masks that they're looking at the evidence on it. I think my understanding is that it's more effective if you're ill to stop other people becoming ill rather than preventing you becoming ill in the first place. However, I think my big concern over wearing masks is I wouldn't want for people to suddenly start wearing masks and find out that our frontline services don't have any masks. I mean, I think we understand that the global supply of PPE is struggling. And to put a system under more pressure if we don't have the full evidence of the efficacy of wearing masks yet, I don't think would be the right decision. And so it's right that the Chief Scientific Advisor is watching, listening, taking on board evidence from other countries, and then making decisions and tweaks as we go along. But in terms of changing any of the guidance, no, it appears to be working. From my conversations with frontline health professionals and with the police, with the ambulance service, with the hospital, what I'm hearing is that it's working, that actually this is all about, I think a lot of people forget that when the Prime Minister announced that we were going into lockdown, he said it would be us out here in the community that would make this a success. That it's government will do its best and try and put things in place, but it's up to us to make it work. And I think the evidence is that by and large, especially in Surrey and especially in our constituency of Guildford, that people have been abiding by the guidance and it's been making a difference.
Yes. Now, I certainly all observation seems to indicate that the compliance levels in Guildford and the constituency general have been very good. But there has been some confusion on the matter of whether it's permissible to drive a short distance to take some exercise. And there has lately been some clarification of that from government that says it's okay. And indeed, that's in line with the advice from the College of Policing, which says police officers should not sanction people doing that. So do you think that it was the right decision to close the few country car parks that the Borough Council are responsible for?
Well, when Guildford Borough Council did finally close their car parks, I did put a tweet up to say that I was in full support of them taking that measure. I think at the point in time that the guidance was issued around, trying not to only take essential journeys, what we were looking at was how much capacity did we have to be able to deal with any risk factors that come from taking those journeys. So, say somebody has a car accident and we suddenly need an ambulance service. I think it was all about minimizing that risk so that we didn't put pressure on capacity. I've had a conversation this week with the Southeast Ambulance Service, and the message to me was that they're actually coping fairly well. So I'm sure that putting a little bit of extra demand on the system now isn't going to be the end of the world. But I would still encourage people that if they are able to take their exercise by leaving their house without getting into a car, that's probably still a sensible thing to do. And if they must, then they can leave. But I don't have any indications at the moment from Surrey County Council that they will be opening up their car park again.
No, but they're the Surrey ones, but there's also the Guildford Borough ones, aren't there?
There is, but this is about sort of, I suppose, collective responsibility within the councils, and the guidance, as it was updated, said, make sure that your exercise exceeds the journey time.
Yes.
And now you're allowed to go out more than once a day. Well, it would be easy for somebody to drive 3 hours somewhere, exercise for 6 hours, and drive 3 hours.
But I don't think that's what I don't think that's what people are saying. But I do think that people for instance, in Park Barn or Belfields, yes, maybe they're dog owners, to drive a short way to have a walk in the countryside is understandable and beneficial for mental health as well as physical health.
Yes, and I understand those arguments as well, and I think mental health will increasingly become more of a consideration as we, go into this next period of 3 weeks of lockdown. And I can see that one of the considerations that have been given in the new set of guidance is about people being able to, if they need to cool off, having had an argument in their home, to be able to go and stay somewhere else for a few days. And I think that's quite significant, and that's around the issue, I believe, of domestic violence and just making sure that where situations are difficult in homes and people are struggling, that they are able to go somewhere else. So I agree that being able to get out and going somewhere nice is lovely to go for a walk, and that we need to be careful from people's mental health. But I do think people like definitive guidance, and they do like it to be black and white. I think when it is grey, it's more difficult. So I would like the government to be very clear on what it's saying, and I would like the police to be very clear on where there are sanctions and where there aren't. And for me, it's still a bit too grey, but as long as we continue with our wonderful tradition of policing by consent, I think we'll be all right.
Good. Okay. And now a much more serious problem, of course, is the inadequate supply, as it's been reported, of personal protection equipment in some of our hospitals. What is the current situation at the Royal Surrey and local care homes?
So it's been a little while since I spoke to our Chief Executive at the Royal Surrey, Louise Stead. But my understanding is there's two different supply lines for PPE. So the hospitals are part of Public Health England, and they have their own sort of separate procurement set up there. And it's been right that they have not sat and waited for supplies to come, but they have proactively gone out and sort of asked the community, for help and support, and that the community have absolutely stepped up to the mark in terms of designing equipment to go into the Royal Surrey. That's been incredibly wonderful. So businesses, schools, university have all helped. I think that's the right thing to do, and I think it's been the right approach across several things in Guildford, that rather than waiting for things to arrive, that people have been proactive in setting things up. And it's one of the strengths of our community. So my understanding is that a huge amount of PPE within Public Health England has been procured, and it has gone out to various trusts and hospitals. On the care home side of things, that's slightly different. It comes through the local resilience forums that are sort of set up at that county level, and they have been procuring PPE through several different sources. And probably a week or so ago, I had a spreadsheet through of all the care homes in the Guildford constituency, how many COVID cases there were and what their PPE supplies were like. But from the time that I had that to my understanding now, and I haven't had an update on that spreadsheet, is that in care homes, things have moved quite quickly in terms of the number of cases and the difficulty with PPE. And it's not just care homes, it's hospices as well, providing, essential end-of-life care. They've been concerned about, are they adequately protected? Do they have the right supplies? I think the issue around PPE, especially in hospitals, as I laid out in my letter, was actually the guidance. So when I spoke to Louise Stead, she said it's not the supplies of PPE, it's the guidance on how to use it appropriately in appropriate settings. And so once that guidance came out, not that long ago, and it was clear, then they were able to say, okay, in ICU we use this, and in other wards where we're not dealing necessarily with COVID patients, we use this. For the care homes and the supplies that are coming through from through the local resilience forum, I've been kept up to date by the county council in terms of the amounts that they're getting through. They're not getting 100% of what they're ordering through, but they're not getting zero either. But it's up to them then, I suppose, to look at where the need is greatest in the county and in the care homes and try and get that supply out. So, it's not easy. I think we're seeing that demand is changing in different places, and it's trying to get the supply through to where that demand is. But I think the key thing is that anybody who's providing that care should feel safe and should feel protected. And, that's the important thing. So regardless of the difficulties that we have, and it's not just us in this country, it's every country in the world who are trying to get hold of PPE and trying to find ways of manufacturing it very quickly. And I think this country has stepped up to the plate in terms of its innovation and its design and getting the supplies, homegrown supplies out.
How often do you speak to Louise Stead?
Probably once every couple of weeks.
Okay. Do you think that's enough to know what's going on there?
Well, I have to be honest with you. My view is that she's got a very important job to do. She needs to get on and do it. Where she's got issues of concern, then her and I have a good enough relationship that she can get in touch with me and say, actually, Angela, this is what's going on. Can you speak to the Department of Health? And I do. And, I did it immediately. I got off the call with her most recently. There was about a list of 5 different things that she was flagging as being potential issues, which I fed in straight away. And the department came back to me straight away. So politicians like to they want to know what's going on, but I don't want to be an encumbrance or
No, I can see that, but you do have a job of representing the hospital to government.
I do, and I will always do my best to do that. And Louise and I did say, how often do we need to speak? And I said, I think it needs to be when it's needed, as opposed to saying, right, we just check in once a week.
Okay. Now
those lines of communication are open.
Fine, thank you. Now, clearly, the crisis is having a major impact on the economy. That's nobody's fault. It's a fact, both nationally and locally. How can the government help when the time comes the local council to restore Guildford's economy?
So I think the government, it's not a case of when the time comes. I think the government have put measures in place already. So what's happening is that we've almost put the economy into hibernation. I think that's the best way to describe it. And if you use sort of an analogy of exercise, it's about creating muscle memory or preserving that muscle memory so that when we get to a situation where we come out of lockdown again, the hope is that jobs are still there, that not every business has gone to the wall. It is very, very difficult, but government have already put measures in place, and huge amounts of money went straight into the council so that they were able to deliver on the grants, the funding grants, the business grants that councils had to. They had to be the sort of the tools to be able to deliver those that sort of help. The other thing that government have done at sort of a county level is that they've deferred the business rates payments into central government, and they've also put extra money into social care. That was announced, I think, yesterday or the day before. So there's a lot that central government are doing in order to help local government continue services, continue to deliver the things that local people need. I think one of the biggest frustrations for me is obviously there was a lot that I had sort of got started in terms of Guildford, in terms of business, in terms of looking at how did we boost things, that suddenly the focus went from that into coronavirus and everything around that. But my understanding is that government is doing its absolute best to make sure that councils are well equipped to deal with what they need to do to provide the services that they need to. And, where there are niggles in the system, I spoke with Caroline Reeves this week, and, we just keep each other in the loop as to what are the issues that are being flagged with businesses? Where are the things that maybe some businesses aren't able to apply for things where others can? And I think we're all concerned to make sure that Guildford as a local economy is able to bounce and become vibrant again. And I think, there are a lot of things are struggling, including the arts. So, the Yvonne Arnaud and Guildford Fringe and some of those things that require audiences in close spaces have had to put themselves into mothballs, but it comes at real risk for them to be able to take those mothballs away and still be a viable entity. So I think, where businesses are struggling and there may not be the government funding in place or the borough council is not able to help them, I think they need to use social media networks and let people know that there is a risk that they may not be there as we open up again. And this is where the kind-hearted generosity and philanthropy in our community comes into play. And I've seen that a lot. People have been incredibly generous in supporting some of our sectors and making sure that they are still viable.
Okay, do you think that the situation will act as a catalyst for change, and that some of the change that may have occurred more gradually will happen more suddenly now when we restart the economy?
Without a doubt, this crisis will be a catalyst for change, I think, in more ways than the economy and business. I think people will have a genuine look at how they do things and, whether the way we did things before are necessary. I know some big multinationals are already looking how many of their staff can actually work from home. These things do work. But I think on the flip side of that, you then create a situation, if people are working from home, then do they need the office space? We'll start to see a change in.
And another thing is, I beg your pardon. I just wanted to say at this point that another thing is, I think we're realising how much we depend on key workers who are not always very well paid.
Oh, absolutely. I think this crisis has brought to the fore what we rely on in this in this time, in this pandemic, and this being a health crisis, is showing us, how valuable our key workers are. But I think it's not just the people working in our hospitals and our care homes, but it's all about networks, in terms of our, lorry drivers who are taking food supplies, across the country, and making sure that our supermarkets are well stocked. And I think if there's anything that I've learned is how effectively government works at all levels in delivering things that we take for granted. And this has been very much a practice of pulling things apart. Everything's been pulled apart and looked at to see what do we need, what needs to be in train for us to work as an economy, but also for our health system to work. And so, I think there will be lessons that come out of this. And one of the things that I think people have also appreciated is how the environment feels different without all the aeroplanes going backwards and forwards in the sky and the traffic on the roads. I think people have noticed a difference in a very short period of time. And so I think looking at the environment and that sort of tension that we have between the environment and ramping up the economy again and getting everything going, and it being about growth and prosperity, those are some of the bigger issues that we will be talking about going forwards.
Yes,
the balance of things.
Now, you mentioned there we're becoming more aware of the key things in our society that keep us going. And I would argue, of course I would, that one of those things is journalism and the reporting of the news. I would say it's essential for a healthy democracy that goes on. But it's also very clear that local journalism, already in poor shape, has been hit very hard through the reduction of advertising revenue, which has plummeted. What can the government do to help? Because presumably, although we criticise the government, they recognise that it is an important part of our society. So what can the government do?
So I think, it's quite clear that sensible, decent local journalism is a really important part of our community, and obviously the Guildford Dragon is part of that in Guildford, and people do turn to local journalism as a reliable source, and almost making it more granular, taking those big national issues and sort of saying, well, how does this affect our local area, and then also taking that sort of that local grassroots approach and sort of saying, well, actually, this is how it is for us. How do these big government announcements sort of fit in with our local community here? I think it's important. So I'm very happy to speak to DCMS on the behalf of local journalists and just make sure that they feel supported as we go on. But I think you've highlighted quite an important issue of their advertising drying up. And I know it's not just the local papers, but the national papers are really struggling at the moment in terms of numbers. I think people might go on their daily walk, but they're not always going past a newsagents to pick up their newspaper. People are getting a lot more of their content online. It's great that you're an online provider. And I think perhaps, maybe the message is, through us having a conversation today, is if you can support your local paper through advertising, please do so, do consider it. It might be something that I can do as a Member of Parliament, is use the Guildford Dragon paid for advertising as well. It might be that rather than government at that level helping, your local government can help as well. I belong to or rather the Guildford Dragon belongs to the Independent Community News Network, and they're campaigning at the moment, or complaining rather, that we were excluded from a government nationwide advertising campaign relating to the crisis. So maybe that is one thing you could lobby on our behalf to get us included into that. Sure.
But
yeah, no problem.
Okay, and finally, I just want to say, obviously the crisis continues and the lockdown continues in order to fight the virus. Do you have a message now for the constituents in Guildford?
I think the message that I would like to say is just an enormous thank you, I think, for several things. The strength of our civic society and the strength of our voluntary groups and the strength of the philanthropy and just the care in Guildford for others has been extraordinary to witness. I think it's a thank you for following the guidance and for being, I suppose, leaders in the rest of the country as to how, things can be done well. I think the voluntary groups that have been set up in the communities, the residents associations, the local councils, parish councils who where we have them, have been amazing in identifying those who need extra support. And this was one of the key things I think that's made a difference in Guildford, was rather than waiting for the government support to trickle down, and I think I knew that was going to be quite a big task and quite lengthy, was getting out straight away and saying, can you please set up these sort of new neighbourhood watches, these new community networks, get them underway straight away. People were concerned about GDPR. Well, they relaxed sort of the GDPR restrictions quite swiftly to enable people to do the right thing and to be able to help and support. And I think, the message is thank you, keep it up, keep going. I am still talking to people about future growth opportunities and things to help Guildford and the economy as we go forward. I haven't forgotten the things that I, stood on and the issues that I was campaigning on. I do think that the conversation is going to change now. There will be a pre-COVID-19 conversation and a post-COVID-19 conversation. And as we come through this, some things may have to change. But at the end of the day, we are working really well together. There is a wonderful cross-party effort. Your local politicians are doing you proud, and just carry on. And thank you.
Angela Richardson, MP for Guildford, thank you very much.